Good morning, everyone. Andrew here. So it's another beautiful spring morning. I actually took a video just before, so I'll edit it into this one, just to show you actually what's in front of me here, in front of this camera on the computer. Just see the view that I look at. So my little art studio here. So yeah, there's a little bit of sun out before. That was nice. That didn't last long. As I've said before, the clouds tend to like the mountains quite a lot out here, so you see a lot of them. So today I wanted to talk about, well, this feeling of hopelessness that a lot of people are experiencing right now, which is completely understandable considering what's going on. I live in Victoria in Australia, and from what I understand, it seems to be that we are going through perhaps the harshest of what's been going on in the world at the moment, and it's really, put people to to their knees and even beyond, where people have really. There's been a lot of suicide, not just in adults, but even in adolescents and, for I understand, children as well. Now, what can I say about this, really? I read this morning I was on Instagram, just looking at some of the things that are going on, keeping up to date with what's going on. And I read the comment sections, and I do that with a lot of things, actually. I go on to, say, for instance, Reddit, and I look at a lot of forums there on all sorts of topics, and I get an idea of where people are at, what they're thinking and feeling about all sorts of topics. But in Instagram this morning, I saw someone say that they'd lost hope so much that if it wasn't for their young child, they would have taken their life by now. And I know that wouldn't be an isolated story at all. I've been pushed to the brink too, personally, over this last 18 months, and it's hard to really tell people what that's like unless they've experienced it themselves. That it really has been quite a living hell out here. Now, the feeling of hopelessness obviously is going to come out of that when everything's been taken away from you. Your freedom's completely been taken away from you. But not just that, it's not just the freedoms. It's not even seeing how you'd ever get back to having things the way they were. And in all honesty, I'm going to say I don't think they ever will be the way they ever were. But I don't say this in a pessimistic way, so we'll talk about this. It's really something we need to do is now reframe our mind based on the current events. I recall when I was about 20 years old, I think I was, and I was sitting at a cafe outside, I remember, and I was probably having a coffee. In fact, I remember exactly what I was having. And I used to do a lot of writing, just my thoughts, just thinking about life, thinking about things. And I realized then that one of the greatest lessons that you can learn in life is how to adapt, because life is always changing. It's always changing. And when we become rigid and we become stuck, well, that's when we really start to have the problems, because life's cycling and changing in a new direction, but we're still trying to live in the old way. And that's where we really do have some troubles. It's another thing I've sort of noticed too, because living out here, and not just where I am now, but where I've lived in nature, around trees and things, where you can learn a lot from nature, for instance. And I don't think what I'm saying is probably a new thing. It's something I discovered, but I think I've read this in books anyway, from ancient wisdom, where they learn from nature. Is that when I look at the trees, particularly during high winds, and last few days had some extremely high winds out here, actually, it's the ones that go with it, that go with the wind, that keep standing. So the ones that are rigid and old, they're the ones who fall over a lot of the time. They're not grounded. They fall over, their branches fall off. And I know all about branches falling off, because trees are dropping things on the roof all the time. You see this massive bang all the time. You got to get used to that. Anyway, so it is a very interesting thing about life, that life really is like that. And basically what I'm getting at is we need to understand that within ourselves, that we need to be more flexible with what's happening. So I know a lot of people, for instance, they'd have the average day where they would, on the weekend perhaps, where they would get up early and maybe they'd get the paper, or and then maybe go to the cafe to read it, maybe catch up with friends, And at the moment, we don't have any of that. We haven't had any of that sort of thing for quite some time. There's certainly dribs and drabs every so often, there's people wanting to, going to the movies, making an afternoon of it, or enjoying rainy days, perhaps going to somewhere to a book club, all sorts of things. Okay, there's all sorts of things, even sporting things. A lot of kids now who like to play football and things like that, they can't do any of those things. Everything's been stripped away, and understandably, people are turning to escapisms. So, as adults, a lot of adults are turning to alcohol. Of course, those shops are still open during all this nonsense. We're the total antithesis of health, despite what they tell us. It's total lies. I'll come back to that in another video. But so, I'm not saying anything right now that people aren't aware of. I'm just sort of identifying. Perhaps some people don't really know how bad it is in Victoria, Australia, but it really is a police state, and there's a lot of violence from police, a lot of harassment. They've completely lost their minds. And I will touch on this in another video, but I just want to go on a little thing here that it's completely immoral. And anyone who's in the police force still, hopefully you're listening to this, or someone you know is listening to this, and I don't really care if you get upset because I'm telling the truth. If you work for the police force still, you stand by the laws and you go by those laws and you go by the orders that you're told, you are an immoral person, and by definition, you're a very bad person. There's no ifs and buts, there's no excuses, there's no my family or that. It takes courage to stand up for what's right. So if you do this, you are a bad person. Just know that you are a bad person. So I have my little sidetrack there. But now, let's talk about how to find hope in these times. Well, as I said, it's a thing about we need to change our perspective on things. Okay. So now, hopelessness comes from a lot of things. I've experienced it, and I'll talk about it a little bit from my own experience, which is always helpful, I suppose. That I have tried so much over the last 18 months. I lost a business, and I had a lot of loss over the last 18 months. And I've tried very, very, very much, not very hard even. I don't usually like to say I've worked hard, as in overdone it, but I have. I've pushed myself to the limits to try to get things going, and I got a little bit off balance at times over the year. And that's why I did that, because most of the time I know never to really over push things. But, when finances are going not so great and that, I wasn't meditating as much. That's another thing that's very important. And I know those times I got off balance. And I pushed hard, and then I got more frustrated, more angry. And all these things started coming up inside of me, and it wasn't helpful at all. Because I was still trying to push forward with hope that what I was doing was going, that things were going to change. And then I got to the realization it's just not going to change. It's just going to get a lot worse. And it is getting worse. And I think, I don't know how things are going to end up, but I know that I'm very confident that things at some point, they may get a little worse still, maybe a lot worse still, but I think eventually we'll push through. However that looks, I don't know. Now, what I have redone, I've gone back to how I used to think before I got caught up in all the stresses of this last 18 months. And I realized, well, I can, rather than having hope in a current dynamic which is no longer existent. So we have this hope a lot of the time in this belief of this society that we currently have been accustomed to have known. And so we have hope that what we do now, that things will work out in that old paradigm, if we want to call it that. But that's gone, really. If we're going to be honest with ourselves, we just need to be honest with ourselves. That has gone. So now it's like, okay, well, what have we got now, and how do we work with it? So we may need to perhaps humble ourselves a little bit in some regards. Maybe this is happening anyway to a lot of people, whether they want this or not. Just job losses in itself. It can humble people, not just from maybe some people attached to the prestige of their job title, but also the monetary thing, because some people perhaps making quite a good amount of money per hour or week or whatever it is, wage. And that's gone, and now perhaps they're on very little. And then sort of ideas that can come through people's minds, and this is going to be so varied, but I'm just giving examples, that someone may be accustomed to drinking a certain type of bottle of wine, very expensive bottle of wine, maybe once a week or once a month or something like that, as an example, one thing. But now they can't do that at all. But then it's not just that, it's a whole bunch of other things. Now they can't buy the nice cheese that went with it, okay? This may seem, superficial in a way, but the thing is, we need to retrain ourselves to think, okay, well, it's not just cheese and wine. It's all sorts of things. It's where we lived. It's how we've lived. It's perhaps, we used to be able to go and buy certain things when we needed them or wanted them, and now we can't. We've got to change our, even our basic needs. We have to change those to perhaps being a bit more frugal, and we can't buy all the exorbitant, yummy things that we bought before, all the highest quality things that we bought before. We need to make adjustments and changes somewhere. But what we need to do through doing so is we need to look at our values in life, because our values, we do what we generally value more, but sometimes that needs to change whether we like that or not. So you may have been someone, for instance, who, instead of spending money on something, let's say, that was good for you, health related in some way, just keeping it fairly broad here, you may say, I used to spend my money on getting my car detailed. Okay, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. What I'm saying is you valued that over something that was perhaps made a little bit more sense in terms of your health, but instead you valued your car being cleaner and that. Okay, not a judgment, just saying. But in this case now, you might sort of say, well, and it's not just about that. You might say now, well, I did value still this other thing more, but now I have to let that go. You might say, well, I can't get my car detailed now. I have to look at more basic need things that are really important. And health things are, like food is very important. That's one of the first things. It's, again, this is another topic in itself. I'll do a video on. So this is one aspect. What are we valuing? Okay, and you might have to give up certain services that you've had. So you may have had Netflix and you can't afford that anymore, for instance. You may have had Spotify and things like that. Okay, all sorts of things like that. And there's sort of luxury things. So you might have to give up all the luxuries. You value the luxuries, but now you can't afford them, or for whatever reason, or it might not be those things, but you'll know because everybody's different. But you are going to have a value realignment, readjustment, and that's not a bad thing. Okay. But I know it gets a little bit deeper than that too when you're really facing not just on those sort of things, when you're getting to the point of facing homelessness. Now, I can tell you from experience, I've experienced it already twice this year, but now it's not even an experience anymore, because where I currently am, I have to leave. I have 60 days to leave, and I've got nowhere to go. So it's maybe a good thing to talk about from my own personal experience. So in terms of that, I valued this wonderful art studio that I'm currently in. There's the bungalow that's attached to just near the home here, just on the same property. And I've had to just think about a lot of things, and what's really important, what am I going to do with things, all that sort of stuff. And well, I've already started doing it. I've started selling what I can, and it's not the easiest climate to sell things in, particularly being out where I live, because there's travel restrictions too. So even if somebody likes something, they can't come out here, or they're too afraid to come out here. Okay, that's probably the better way to put it. They can, but just too afraid, because they're afraid of getting a fine. Now, so I've had to really face that thing. Well, what's the worst case scenario? I'm still looking for places, but the rents are horrendously high at the moment. And it's not been a good financial year, so it's something I need to think about. So I was like, well, worst case scenario would be I'll just find somewhere to live in the forest for a while, and, I'll sell what I can, give away what I can, and burn the rest. I've already started burning some things already that I know aren't going to really be easy things to move on. And it's not that I didn't value those things in my life at a time, but now we're in a different time. We're in a time where those things aren't so important. And I can always look, things are replaceable. Things are replaceable. People are not. You're not replaceable. Your children aren't replaceable. Your family, your friends, they're not replaceable. These are what we should be valuing one another. And I'll tell you, if anything in these times, it tells us that, or it shows us, it forces on us to reflect upon what really matters in life. And people matter, love matters, we all matter as people, as individuals, and collectively. I mean, so as horrible as things are going on for a lot of people, and there is a lot of horrible things, which I will address in another video, we need to then think, well, okay, I'm going to create my own hope, and I'll create my own vision and my own dream in the current climate, the current situation we're in. And this is not so impossible, actually, now I comes to mind thinking about this. I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with, what happened in Soviet Russia, and there was the farming type community. I think they were called the Kulaks, and anyway, they came in and basically just took everything and basically took these people to prisoner and left a lot of them to die, and many did die, and they took them to the gulags and as slaves, and some of them they left out in the forests, and they thought, well, they didn't really worry about them because they thought there's no way they'd survive out there because it's so cold and all that. But what they did, they banded together, and I mean, what they had was only slightly better than Stone Age type things. But what they did was they actually ended up creating very flourishing communities. And now I'm not saying we do that. We all go off into the forest. I'm not saying anything wrong with that. But my point is here that these people had absolutely nothing. They were left for dead by their own government, which is not different to what we have now. That's exactly what we have now, actually. If you haven't woken up to that, that's exactly what we have now. It just looks a little differently, and people haven't quite caught up with that yet. But what it shows is that we don't need them, and that these people still created a great life from the very bottom. And the thing too, I know that when people face suicide, they think, well, there's no hope, there's no way out of this, and they see only the option as taking their life. But it's only one option. It's not the only option. It's just that you think that is the only option, if that's what you're thinking, or anyone who has thought that before. And I know, because I've been there before too. And I know what it feels to be in great despair. And that's just why I know that we need to realign our mind, the way we look at things and think about things. That if you're at the very bottom, well, the only way you can move now is up. That's it, isn't it? If you're at the very bottom, then you can only go upwards. But even that, it's I mean, it's not, it's easier said than done. But we need to look at things differently a lot of the time, and ask ourselves this question: is what I'm thinking true, or is it only what I think to be true? As in, is what I'm thinking to take, say, my own life, for instance, as the worst case scenario, the truth, that's the only option, or is it only what I believe to be the option? And you'll find it's only what you believe. And you have that belief based on a whole myriad of things that have been put into your head over time from society. So coming back to this idea of hope then, well, as I said, I'm facing, potentially living out of four-wheel drive, which is, I mean, there's some benefits in that. It's not all bad. That's the thing. I try and find the benefit of things. Of course, I have things I prefer. I mean, obviously prefer having a bathroom handy at night and all those sort of things. But resisting what's happening too is not going to make things different for me. If I start getting so upset, despite my best efforts, well, it hasn't changed anything. It's just upset myself. And I know that things change anyway in time, and a lot of good things come out of things. That sometimes through the greatest struggles, we learn a lot about ourselves and about life, and we gain a lot of strength. And you know what? That strength is not always just for ourselves. It's often we become great teachers when we go through great hardships to show others the way, to help others. And the more we help others, the more they can help others and help themselves and all those sort of things. And so, going back again to hope, I keep on going on these little these little trails here off here, but well, I think that we really need to look at how do we create our own futures based in the current climate, and change. Perhaps we need to change the way we look at what we desired and what we wanted. Now, I'm not saying we give up on our dreams at all. Sorry about that. My neighbour just came over, so I just had to attend to that. So what I was talking about was our dreams. So yeah, I don't think we should never give up on our dreams. They may look a little differently than what we had imagined. So, you might have imagined things being a certain very specific way, but perhaps it looks a little bit different than that. And it may look a little different than that in the new way our world is at the moment and progressing. But it doesn't mean that we can't still have the things that we value and work towards and think about. Sometimes we need to step back a little bit about how we were looking at these things and thinking, well, maybe I don't need it to look this way or be this way. It reminds me of a story of a man I knew once who was a lecturer at a university in an area that I lived at. And he worked 7 days a week, and not just at the university, but also in his other work as a painter and decorator. And that's what he was doing previously before he became a lecturer. And he wasn't lecturing in that, it was another area, but anyway. And he had a family, just a young family, and had a child, and he was working 7 days a week, and they built this magnificent home, or we're in the process of building it, and of course the costs blow out with a lot of these things, and that did big time on that one. It was a beautiful place, beautiful home, and he was working a lot to support that. And I said to him, I said, you need a lot less than you think to have a really great life. Because he was thinking, well, no, he's convincing himself, well, no, I'm okay with working this amount of hours, and sometimes my wife comes and helps me on these jobs, and look, I look, that's great. I'm not trying to take that away from him. But how long is it sustainable to work 7 days a week? That's really not. None of us are. We're not machines. Life should be enjoyed, and it's only because a lot of the time that we get these ideas from society in different ways, from a lot of advertising and this societal narrative that we believe we need to live our lives a certain way, otherwise we won't be fulfilled. I mean, we see that enough anyway in many ways. I can remember when the people started getting crazy over housing. Buy more, buy housing, I've got to get a house, got to get this, got to get that. And before that time, things were actually quite affordable, until everybody went crazy over it. And this hysteria, thinking I need to have this thing. And need more and get more out of other people. And it's actually antithesis of where real fulfillment and peace comes from. And the truth really is that it's really, we find the most fulfillment in how we really give back to the world in a meaningful way, and the world will give back to us in ways that not necessarily through the same person, but there's plenty of stories of this, and I can talk about that from personal experience, but I don't want to get too off track here about it's finding hope. But so as I said, the dreams, our dreams in itself can be hope, our hope. And the thing is, we don't need to wait for the future for things to happen. We often live in this idea that in the future things will be better, and the truth is, the future really is now, today. Everything you think, say, and do, the actions you take towards creating this future, this actual future, really starts now. It is now. The future is now. So don't delay your happiness. Look for it. How can I make it that way today? The way I often go about things, every day actually, is I'm really grateful for the simple things. Like I woke up this morning, I don't know what time it was, quite early. It was still dark, and it was really raining, really, really, really heavy rain. And I thought about when I was laying in bed. I was happy to have a bed, which I'm actually currently borrowing because I lost my bed recently because of mold in the house. It's hard to throw it out, and I can't buy another one at the moment because nothing's open. So anyway, I've got this makeshift bed, and I was just lying there thinking how grateful I am that I even have that, and how grateful I am that I even have a roof over my head right now, and that it's my senses that it really experience life. So what a joyful thing it is to lie in bed warm, and to listen to the rain, and actually be inside under a roof, to be warm, to be contained somewhere. It's a wonderful feeling, and I'm grateful for that. And it's easy for me to be grateful for that because I'm facing potentially soon maybe not that, but at the same time I'll still find ways to be grateful for wherever I'm at in the future, whatever comes. And as I was saying to my neighbour about what's going on here, I said it's like you hope for the best and you plan for the worst, in a way. Not entirely. We shouldn't always just be thinking, oh, the worst is going to come, but just have that in your mind. Well, if things don't go quite to plan, what is plan B, but always aiming for plan A. And another way of putting that is, shoot for the moon, because even if you miss the moon, you'll still be amongst the stars. And that's a really good way of going about life. So even with things like this morning, I made myself a tea. I just got I boiled the kettle. Very grateful to have the kettle. I mean, when you don't have things too, it's really easy to think how grateful you are for things you have. And maybe you've never not had things, but let's say if you just put that in, just think about that. Think, well, imagine right now boiling the kettle. I didn't have a kettle to boil, or I had no electricity to, maybe put on the toaster or whatever it is you do, or I didn't have hot water. And I personally had all these experiences, so it's easy to do. But I still think about them because it makes me more grateful for what I have. But and there's a sense of joy about that too for what I do have, which is great. But you can find that in so many different ways. But you're doing it now in the present moment rather than worrying about all this stuff in the future. Excuse me. And I know we still need a plan for things. But anyway, I was making this tea, and I thought I just got a little bit of turmeric. I made a turmeric type latte, a little bit of turmeric powder, and flattened up a teaspoon of that in my cup, and a heaped teaspoon of cinnamon. So grateful to have that wonderful spice, and grateful for all the people who have made this happen. Who've designed the packaging to make it a thing, and who have harvested and all these sort of things to bring me this, to make this wonderful drink. And then I put in some vanilla powder and a little bit of maple syrup and some ground ginger, boiled water, and about 2/3 of boiled water, and then some almond milk. And I'll tell you, that is luxury. That is absolute luxury. Yet most people don't see it. We already live. We have so much luxury in our lives already. But it's really, a lot of it's our mindset. We have so much. It is really quite an abundant world, but it's based on how we look at it. And hope for better things. Well, make sure that what you're hoping for is actually what you really, really want anyway, is really authentic to who you are and what you desire, because most things that people want and desire are not really what they have chosen themselves. And we see this with how most people live their lives. They just follow the leader. They never really stop to think about what it is they really need, and therefore they try to force themselves into these lives that they don't really want to live, and they're not happy. They do these jobs they don't want to do because they think that's what they have to do, and it's not. Who told you that? You did. You made that decision. The same with now, if you've made the decision that there's no hope, well, isn't there readjust how you look at things, because where did you get that from? Those thoughts and beliefs came from somewhere, and you came up with them. And I'm not trying to take away from the desperation of people too. I mean, I know we have down days. I mean, even I'm generally quite upbeat most days. I have days where I'm flat. I get that. I'm not trying to have a go at people for feeling down about things. But don't resist what's going on. Say, okay, well, this is going on. I've tried to do X, Y, and Z to change that, but I cannot at this point in time because there's all these things going on. Okay, whatever they are. But it's another thing. Like, I think it was Einstein who said, and I'm not sure. I'm not saying this verbatim, but something along the lines of that. Doing the same thing again, expecting a different result, is I think it was the sign of insanity, or something along those lines. Anyway, something like that. I'm pretty sure it was Einstein who said that. So look at it in your own life. What are you doing every single day is exactly the same, and expecting a different result? It's not going to change, is it? Another great thing I learned from Carl Jung, I believe, who said this. Great psychoanalyst and psychologist of the last century, wonderful man. He said, we don't solve our problems, we outgrow them. So how we outgrow them is in our state of consciousness, or our way of looking at things. So the current, we all grow. I'll talk about it from my own perspective. The person I am today is so different to the person I was 5 years ago. So different. Doesn't mean I don't have some similar taste in some things that I enjoy. Not all of them. I've changed quite a lot, even in what I wear. But the problems that I had then don't exist anymore, because I outgrew them by expanding my knowledge, my awareness, my consciousness, my way of thinking about things. And this is why education is very important. And I'm not talking about formal education, I'm talking about self-education, self-knowledge, knowledge of ourselves, our lives. And the best way we can do this is spend some time, daily, if we can, or learning some wisdom from someone in some way. I mean, I know most people just spend most of the time watching garbage. It's no good for your brain. And I mean, it goes back to the thing I said before about Einstein. If you keep doing the same thing, you're going to keep getting the same result, right? So if you want to feel better, well, you need to make some changes. It might be food. A lot of the time it is food. Not just the type of food, the amount of food, when you eat the food, exercise, all these sorts of things. These basic things most people are aware of. But this is another topic in itself. What I'm saying is, don't lose hope. Just maybe look at how you need to adjust it to adapt. Like I said, when I was 20 years old, I realized we need to adapt to the changes. Okay, the faster you adapt, the better off you're going to be. It's as simple as that. So anyway, I think I'm going to leave this here, and I hope someone's got something out of this. It's of some use. And I really wish you all a really wonderful day. I really do. And I say, don't lose hope. Just readjust things to suit the current climate, but don't give up on your dreams. They may look a little different, but also don't push against the current tide. It's like swimming in a river, and it's a raging current coming down. Swimming against it, you're just going to tire yourself out, and you're going to get dragged along anyway with it. So either turn around and just go with it, or swim to the side. So anyway, I'll leave this here, and as I said, I really wish you all a wonderful day.